Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about minimalism and the idea of using items rather than trying to own them. Let's talk about that today. So, I'm sitting in my bedroom today, which is, I guess, the room that I sit in when I talk about minimalism. I have been getting rid of all of my camera equipment today. Today has been a big day. So this is a little bit of a gear video. I am talking about the stuff that I sold out of my film equipment, but don't click off if you're not interested in that type of thing, because this is a video about minimalism and about saving money and freeing up money to use for better things rather than having to go further work for that money to pay for new items. I sold a bunch of stuff that I wasn't really using anymore, like a big heavy video tripod, these big batteries called V-Lock batteries. I sold a couple of big lights. I also sold a slider, which I don't really use either. So yeah, I sold a lot of gear and I feel pretty good about it. I was on the fence about it for a while because I felt like, I do a personal project in the future where I decide I'm going to need more of that equipment. It would be good to have it on hand. There's a few different things that really ended up twisting my thinking enough that I was fine with letting that go. One of those things I was thinking was really just that if I ever wanted to buy those things back, I could, because I bundled for them in the first place. When I bought most of those items, I bought a large amount from a closing studio, and I bought all of their equipment, and I got a pretty good deal on it. So I ended up selling it, basically breaking even on it. So I know that if I want to get that stuff in the future, I just got to find them on a similar discount, and it shouldn't really be much of a difference. The other thing was I also just challenged myself to think, like, mainly what I want to shoot ever is documentary stuff, and then things like this, kind of just like personal documenting. And both of those things, they don't really require much equipment. And the way that I live, being kind of intentionally minimalistic and low tech, I was like, you know what? I don't need a bunch of crazy gear to do all of this. And in fact, I'd like to do it as naturally as possible, using natural light rather than artificial light. I think most of the stuff I aspire to do, if I was to fully take on my own projects and just do it the way I want to do it as per my creative vision, that I don't need most of this equipment. Once reflecting on it long enough, I realized that the only gear that I'm really using and actually using week to week and getting value from is the stuff that I use to shoot here on this YouTube channel. That is very little equipment that I'm using to shoot this. I'm going to make a video in the future showing my minimalist YouTube setup. I think it's important for people to see that you really don't need a lot of technical knowledge, and especially not a lot of equipment to make a video like this or like the ones that I normally shoot. That's a video for a different day. But my point is it's not very much gear. It's like the gear that I could hold in like two hands is all the stuff that I shoot this channel with. But the gear that I have for everything else almost takes up a whole room. And all of this gear is worth a good amount of money, but it's not being used. And I think it's slowly depreciating over time. So I thought it's better to just start selling this stuff, I think, and getting the value from it now. So I was planning on listing this stuff on Facebook Marketplace in one of the film buy and sell groups for like specific to film and TV equipment. And that is probably what I will do for some of the other equipment I still have and wish to sell. However, I knew that one of my buddies who I work with in some of the shows I do was going to be taking a new job where he was going to be traveling and he was going to be buying new equipment for that job. So I reached out to him and I said, man, like, I'm looking to sell all this gear. I'm not sure what of this stuff you will need. I sent him a list of all the stuff I'm selling. And I was like, if there's anything from here that you'd want, let's try to bundle it and I'll give you a good deal on all of that. And we were able to come up with a pretty good price, and he came and got it immediately. So it's great. I have freed up some room in my house. I know my girlfriend's going to appreciate that aspect, but I've also freed up some money, which I can then put towards something that I'm going to use at least in the near future rather than who knows when. And I think this is a pretty good way to think about money and things and how those two things relate to one another. A lot of times we tie up so much money in these items and we look for buy it for life items, which is good. It's important to look for things that are quality and that are going to be long lasting. If you're just kind of cycling things through the secondhand market by picking things up and then getting rid of them when you're done with them, I think that's a good way to go, because you don't rack up this huge amount of money for things that you're never going to get rid of. It costs a lot more money if you purchase every item with the intention of never getting rid of it again, even if you don't really use that item after a period of time. You know, we go through seasons in life. People like to say it like that. At least that's a good way to frame it, I think. At a certain time, you have a certain outfit that you like to wear, let's say, and you love it. For a couple of years, you wear it all the time. But then at a certain point, your style changes. And at that point, you're like, why am I holding on to this item? If you're not wearing it, you shouldn't just keep it in your closet. You should try to sell it, or you should just declutter it, because no matter what you paid for it, if it's just being clutter in your life, it's kind of waste. And even better if you can get some of the money back. And especially if it's not something like clothes, it's pretty easy to get the money back. But still, it's important, I think, not in a wasteful sense, but in a kind of open-handed, not letting these items possess me. I'm just using them for a time. Even if I've paid for them, I'm going to sell them when they're not being useful to me anymore, and I'm going to get that money back and put that value elsewhere, rather than just incurring more and more cost and then more and more stuff in your house, a lot of it which is going to inevitably be unused because we only have so much time in the day. So if you have items that are worth money to you, that you spent good money on, but you're not really getting any use, any value from at this point, I think it's a good thing to just kind of look at this and be real. Like, am I going to use this in the next 6 months? And if I sell this, could I just use that money in the future to buy it back if I really needed it? Like, worst case scenario, I could do something like that. That's kind of the way I feel about it. You know, I got out of debt back in 2022, so I'm not worried about debt anymore or anything like that. I'm not going to go into debt if I ever had to repurchase any of these items. And because I bought all of these items on a big bundle used in the first place, I didn't pay a lot of money for them, and I pretty much broke even selling them today. So if I ever end up buying those items back in the future, or just a couple of them for any gigs that I have in the future where I decide I'm going to use this more often, there's going to be not really much value lost. There's not going to be really much money lost in the process of this buying and selling. But I'm not carrying that stuff with me in my house. And now if I need to go, buy a couple more hard drives for the channel or for updating my really old hard drives that I have, that's something that's on my list to do. I've made that money back by selling items that I wasn't using, and then I can put that money toward it rather than having to use the money that I've earned from my labor recently. So I do think that's a good idea, is just not let these things just be clutter in your life. Even if it's a buy it for life item, let it be a buy it for life item for somebody else who's going to actually enjoy it and use it. There's no need just holding on to things and hoarding them, even if they're good quality things, and even if you spent money on them, you can very easily get that money back. So if you're interested in finding out how to do that, I can also link a video above to that where I talk a little bit about how to get the best deal buying and selling. In the future, if you want to see a video on just like how I list stuff, like I do think I do a pretty good job like taking photos, doing the listings, negotiating. I'd be happy to talk about that in a video as well. Let me know if you're interested in the comments section, and I would be happy to make a video on that. I hope you guys found this video interesting. This was basically just my thoughts of, minimalism, and I guess not holding on to things just for the sake of holding on to things. It's, we don't need to work extra to buy things that we want if we have a ton of things that were worth stuff around us that we're not actually using. It's important to, I think, reflect on that, get that money back if possible, and then use that money for that rather than needing to use your hard-earned money that you've made through your labor. Like, just try to find money where you don't need to work for it as much as you can. I think that's the best way to go. If you have stuff around that's not being used, get some money out of it and then put it towards something that you're actually going to use. Thanks very much for watching, folks, and I will see you in the next video.